This is Project Management Paradise.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Project Management Paradise podcast, your passport to project success. I'm your host, Aaron Murphy, and I'm delighted to be joined on the podcast today by Jessica Wilson. With over 18 years' experience in the aerospace and defense industry, Jessica has worked for companies such as Honeywell and Northrop Grumman and specializes in areas such as the Department of Defense contracts, earned value management, forecasting analysis, and program and project management and scheduling in projects. Jessica, thank you so much for being on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to this podcast. We've been trying to get it lined up for a while, so it was great to actually get it in the books.
Yep.
And Jessica, for anyone who might not know you, maybe you could tell us about yourself and your background, and how did you end up working in the aerospace and defense industry?
Sure. So I actually started just out of college in a finance major, and I began working for State Street, which is mutual funds. I always like to say the way I got to Honeywell or aerospace and defense was heavily on my ability to network. So I'm always a big proponent of that. In State Street, I trained a fellow coworker, and that coworker moved on to Honeywell. And sure enough, within a few months, he messaged me and said, "Hey, I think you'd be a really good fit for this role." I ended up taking that opportunity and moving into the aerospace and defense, and absolutely loved it. And that's kind of where my career started. I worked alongside him the entire time I was at Honeywell. And then when I moved to Colorado, I moved to Northrop Grumman. So I did switch from a Department of Energy to Department of Defense. And largely, it wasn't too much of a move. But I did go from a manufacturing environment into more of the software type environment with engineers. So slightly little bit of a difference. Still working with customers, still have requirements, program management. In general, both of them were amazing experiences.
Just goes to show the power of networking and how far it can get you within your career.
Yep, absolutely.
And as you mentioned, you've pivoted then into the aerospace and defense industry, to which you've worked in this industry for over a decade. And what changes have you noticed from your time working in the aerospace and defense industry over the course of the last decade?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's been significant changes collectively towards like an agile environment, just more flexibility, efficient, resilient scheduling practices. Just a few of the things I've seen largely is digital transformation. You may have heard it. That's a big word, buzzword in these industries, and just ensuring, right, that we have the digital technologies to revolutionize scheduling, advanced scheduling softwares to be able to help project managers be more efficient at what they do. I will say that I've seen a lot of talent shortages. So particularly in my area, which was scheduling, high turnover, right, with scheduling. There's not a lot of growth in those areas. So we see a lot of folks coming into these companies, learning a scheduling, loving it, but taking off in the company somewhere else. And that kind of leaves the scheduling with, a little bit of a talent shortage in regards to scheduling, advanced scheduling, I'll say, and being able to help do some of that analysis in the scheduling field. And in general, the demand is just continually increasing, right? So there's always customers, there's always new contracts to bid, and there's competitors, right? So we have a lot of aerospace and defense companies that are going after the same type of contracts. Nevertheless, once you get it, you have to have the right engineers staffed. You have to have project managers ready to go, scheduling. So the demand is high. I'll say that in general, over the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of turnover with tools, software tools. That's one of my big ones. There's a lot of homegrown tools that are being created in these companies, Honeywell and Northrop. I've seen it both, right? And there's really intelligent people that are working in these companies. They see a need, they create a tool. The problem with that is when they leave the company or when they move to another role, it's leaving them with no one to be able to support this tool that they've created to fix a problem, right? So I've definitely seen that a lot. And in general, I think those probably highlight just a few of the changes that I've seen over the past 10 years.
Amazing. And I'd imagine as technology has evolved, there's probably more features that is beneficial for the industry itself. And especially
Yep.
as you were saying with these homegrown technologies, they probably don't have these features or the latest technologies implemented within them. So I imagine it could be quite stagnant at times.
Right. And there's times when the tool just kind of trickles off, right? And so we never use it again, and we're back to square one. Well, we can't fix this tool, or we don't know what we're doing. The resource is gone, so here we are back to square one. So, yep.
Very unfortunate.
Yes.
And you've mentioned the term scheduling a few times. For anyone who might not be familiar with this, maybe you could define what scheduling is when it comes to the aerospace and defense sector.
Yeah. So scheduling in the aerospace and defense sector involves like detailed planning, coordination of various activities to ensure projects are completed on time and within the budget. So typically we have a contract of some sort, let's say the Department of Defense, we get that contract, there's going to be a start and a finish date. Scheduling is really planning and scheduling, coordinating everything that happens in between that. So that's a lot. I put it very simply, but there's a lot, right? This could be years. This could be a 5-year contract. And you're looking at daily activities of what all goes into building whatever widget or software components. So the scheduling piece of it typically looks at resource allocation. So do we have the right people for the work? They look at timeline management. What are our daily tasks? What are our milestones that we have to achieve? We have to look at supply chain coordination. So ensuring we have necessary components and materials are available when we need them. And then there's also risk management. So what are our risks? Developing plans to mitigate them. And typically schedulers work very closely with a control account manager, a CAM. And so those CAMs will help also identify the risk. Scheduling has to make sure, though, that it's folded into their schedule. And lastly, compliance and standards is probably the biggest piece of this, especially over the last decade in regards to industry standards, regulations, safety, quality. You have to think about schedule health, right? To make sure that we're earned value compliant in regards to these industries. So in general, scheduling solutions, we have our hands in almost every department, I feel like. And that's really great if you're a good scheduler and you can have that good collaborative, communicative type team environment and stay on top of things that might go wrong, do schedule analysis heavily, right? So if we're delayed 30 days for a task, it could push out 20 tasks, right? And so it's this constant feel of you're going to be behind unless you have a good scheduler who can come in there alongside the CAM and engineer and be able to figure out if we can work things in parallel, do different type of schedule analysis to help the productivity of the program.
Amazing. I imagine you would have to be playing the long game rather than the short game, especially when it comes to working with other departments within a company.
Yes, absolutely.
And what changes have you noticed in the last decade in scheduling?
From my very beginning, I will say that there's been a large transformation over the schedule importance. And when I first started as a scheduler, I saw CAMs, I saw engineers that kind of brushed us off, thinking they're just a scheduler, right? I felt it. I came into a culture environment where they had offline schedules that they were managing. They don't need that schedule. They were doing it only because they were told to do it. From now to the time that I left here, it's the single source of truth. And so it was a massive culture shift to even engineers and control account managers that what's in this schedule is what's being reported all the way up to the customer level. And so managing that, having it be the single source of truth is the most important. In my last few years, I actually saw engineers and CAMs coming right alongside the schedulers in a team environment, and giving them accurate data. It's the most frustrating thing when you get up in front of directors and VPs and you're presenting these artifacts from the schedule and you have an engineer go, "Oh, that's not right." So it's been a massive shift. Not that doesn't still happen, right? But I think over the last 10 years, I've seen a massive shift personally in the importance of what scheduling does, what a scheduler does, and how important it is to have one single source of truth. I will say too, like I said, the digital transformation was a large piece. It still is. It's going to continue to be automating what we do. Less errors, making sure that the scheduling is syncing with other departments. So in a collaborative platform type environment, I've seen improvements in all of these. I think we still have a ways to go, though, in general, automating things such as reporting, right? And so I think some of the softwares are beginning to get on board with making this a little bit easier for a scheduler and a program manager to have real data, like actual real data being fed into these reports real time instead of a manual process of 8 hours putting something together for a meeting, right? They can click a button and they have it, which is just amazing. And it's really going to help, I believe, this industry in general. And then I would just say that agile process in general, I've seen schedules moving from very complex schedules to an agile feel, right? Which gives a little bit of a flexibility in scheduling. It better handles like complexities and uncertainties in the aerospace and defense projects as well.
That's very interesting. And it just shows the power of perspective when you have that data there ready to go. As you said, rather than waiting for a report to be generated within like 8 hours, having that information at a click of a button saves you so much time and hassle down the road.
Yes.
And anytime on the podcast when I've interviewed anyone that's in the aerospace and defense industry, they always mention that although digital transformation is happening, it's taken a while for it to happen within the industry. So I'd imagine there's so many benefits to this happening now at the moment across the industry, rather than just with scheduling itself.
Absolutely. And you still have your programs that are still ongoing, let's say, that don't want to change their process, right? So they have 2 years left or a year and a half, and they don't want to go in and change things. So they're still utilizing maybe old software or old tools that are outdated. And so I think there will come a certain point in these companies where everyone will be flowing on the same digital transformation road. And it's going to be really cool to watch, I believe, in this industry, specifically in the next 10 years.
And with software and technology, how can they help with the scheduling challenges in the industry? Or do they disrupt the industry, or do they really help accelerate it?
I think with the right technology, it can help. As I mentioned, those homegrown tools every now and then, right? You're running into a lot of challenges. And in general, like advanced scheduling software is really where it's going. And I think over the next 10 years, even like the way technology could come in and transform the program management world, through, let's just say, predictive analysis, for example, getting into AI. There's a lot of things at our fingertips at the moment that we're not even sure, how we can use it. But if you look at schedules, for example, and see if AI or any type of predictive analysis could go through and see, well, this is the pain point, right? This is typically when you don't have a resource, or this is typically when we have a break in the schedule and we're late. Even that type of analysis can help program managers make really good informed decisions. look at variance reporting in the earned value world, in like the IPMDAR setting or a reporting to a customer. You have to write variances on any of your tasks that are delayed. Those variance writings are intense. I've seen CAMs struggle, and then the program managers are going back saying, you need to rewrite this. We can't give this to a customer. What if we could incorporate some of these AI chat, right? Where we can type it in and just put a few words in while we're late and it generates the variance for us. So these are just some ideas, right, of how that could save us a lot of time in the scheduling, even CAM world, control account manager world, and in general, compliance, auditing, like all of these things. If the software has it built in to automatically check for these things, and even maybe even provide us fixes, right? If we had an intelligent software that could say, hey, this is flagging, this is what you can do, right? And it really, now I think you would still have to have a well-informed scheduler that would know, okay, well, I'm clicking this, it's going to do this. And that could be one of the points that could hurt. I think technology could hurt where, oh yeah, I'm just going to click it. The long way of doing math, you don't really know what you're doing at the end. You're just typing in a calculator. So I think it's still important for the scheduler to understand what they're doing in the schedule, even with technology increasing and advancing, and giving them more opportunity to, have things such as the automated reporting. Maybe in a click of the button and you can audit your whole schedule, right? And it gives you all of these things that are wrong and not in compliance with industry standards. There's really a lot of opportunity, and I could probably talk about that for the next 10 minutes. So in general, I think there's a lot of great things that can happen with technology, with scheduling.
And you're seeing it with nearly every application and tool. There is that AI and predictive analytics function with them. And I'd imagine like we're only touching the surface of what is possible. So imagine what it'll be like in 5 years' time and in 10 years' time once we've harnessed this information. And then we can use that to, as you were saying, like, this is the reason why this project's going wrong. And it gives you a few answers and a few reasons. And then we have to use our own knowledge from over the years. Okay, this is the correct way to stop anything happening in the future. And I'd imagine with like the way that AI is going, that soon AI will be able to flag it and do it way in advance before even having to tell us.
Yep, I agree.
And you've mentioned IPMDAR. Why is it so topical at the moment?
The IPMDAR in the aerospace and defense industry is a hot topic for a few different reasons. So there's modernization and efficiency. So the IPMDAR represents a shift from the previous reporting, which was the IPMR. It focuses more more detailed and timely data, which helps like decision-making, project management, right? The customers can see the data. What is also really good about it is compliance and standardization. So all of them are being required to do the same report, right? So from a customer standpoint, Department of Defense, they're seeing the same thing. It's easier for them to go across different programs, do different analysis, and they're looking at the same, same standard format that is with earned value management projects. So that is a key piece here to note. So you can have other projects in a company, if they're not earned value required, they won't have to do these reporting. It's also data driven. So like requiring electronic data instead of physical reports. So again, this is into a digital transformation point and could even get better, I think, in companies as we figure out how we're pulling that data set from the schedule, for example, or from finance. We really have an opportunity to be more efficient with the way we pull that data and provide it to the customer for the IPMDAR report in general.
It's quite interesting. So it's to have that standardization and transparency in place when it comes to the whole process of your schedule and your projects and the whole course of a contract, would it be?
Yeah, the whole course. So as soon as you hit the performance measurement baseline, so a PMB is what we call it, you go into submitting IPMDARs the next month.
That's really interesting. And
yep.
During your time working in the aerospace and defense sector over the last decade, what is a key lesson that you've learned that's helped you throughout your career?
I would say being flexible and adaptable is probably one of the largest key lessons I've learned, especially in the aerospace and defense industry. Things are always changing and advancing, and I've seen a large gap, right, between the younger generation and the older generation in the aerospace and defense sector, where they were set in their ways, they didn't want to change. And then the newer, right, is coming in and they're saying, oh wait, we can make this easier, and we have all these ideas. And there's a little bit of that gap, I'll say, but they have a lot of knowledge that we need. And so the integration of the two is really key, I think, and bringing in new ideas with all of that knowledge that they hold is really, I think, one of the most important things that I've seen, and seeing that in that team environment, right, that everyone can work together, be flexible, change, right? We can't be stuck in one way of doing something because the customer is going to require us to do something else, right? Next year, I'm just guessing. So we constantly have to be able to look and analyze and know that something's going to change. We may need to fix it. We may need to have a new solution, and to be able to be open to that.
Amazing. Jessica, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been really interesting hearing about your experiences in the aerospace and defense sector over the last decade. That's a really good key lesson as well. I think it's a great point to end the podcast on. And my final question for you is, if anyone wanted to reach out and learn more about this topic, or even have a discussion with you, where is the best place to reach you?
LinkedIn is a good one. So I'm on there as, I believe, Jess Wilson. I don't know if you have the link or not, but that's probably the best.
Perfect. I'll make sure to include it in our show notes. And once again, Jessica, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Project Management Paradise podcast at projectmanagementparadise.com. Links mentioned during the episode, including speaker profile details and other resources, are available in the podcast description and on projectmanagementparadise.com, where you can also download or stream all our episodes to date.